Hello and welcome to the Architects of Destiny podcast, where we bring together conscious leaders, spiritual teachers, entrepreneurs and creators whose mission is to be waymakers for the new earth. Our intention is to equip you with the energetic tools you need to step into your divine role as an architect of destiny, to create the life of your desires and to co-create the world we can all be proud of. In each episode, we and our guests will share wisdom and experience as well as practical tools you can use to expand your awareness and accelerate your spiritual growth. Shelley Wasicki is an earth teacher, intuitive, healer and animal communicator, as well as the author of When Animals Speak, True Stories and Spiritual Messages from the Animal Kingdom. In this episode, we talk about how we can develop a more conscious relationship with the animal, plant and tree kingdom to learn their wisdom and co-create the new earth together. This episode is a must for any animal or plant lover. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Shelley Wasicki. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast. And today, it's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to an amazing lady, Shelley Wasicki. And Shelley has got an amazing modality, and we're going to get into this today. And as soon as Riya mentioned that you were coming on, Shelley, I was so super excited about this, and I can't wait to record this episode and conversation because I'm sure the audience and the listeners are really going to get a lot from this. So thank you so much for joining us here today on this episode.
I am so incredibly grateful. When Riya reached out, she was such a pleasure and a joy to have on my podcast. And as soon as I saw that you guys were starting one, when your body lets you know that something resonates, and it was immediate and it was big. And so I'm humbled and I'm so incredibly grateful to be a part of your new experience and your show.
Welcome to the show, Shelley, and thank you so much. I will get straight to the point of why we invited you here. So far, we were talking about the role of humans in this transition to higher dimensional consciousness, to fifth dimensional Earth. However, we are only one of the very many species on this planet. And you are incredibly connected with the animal kingdom, with Gaia herself. So it is our intention for this episode to explore all the ways how we as humans can co-create with other species on this planet, including the animals. And obviously you specialize in animal communication. You even authored a book on the subject. We are very, very curious how we fit in this as humans into this overall picture of co-creating new earth, because obviously animals and plants and all the other elements will be a part of it. So Shelley, to start with, how did you discover your connection with nature and the fact that you can actually communicate with the animals?
Thank you, Riya. That is such a beautiful place to start. And I think what resonates with me the most is, when I chose this life and I incarnated and I was born where I was actually born in a village outside of a tiny town in Pennsylvania. And it was in the mountains. I mean, we grew up outside. We grew up playing in the woods and talking to the trees and talking to the rocks and talking with the animals and in little creeks and catching fish and so I think as I have grown in my journey, sometimes as adults, when we're in the middle of our lives, life gets in the way and we forget what we were drawn to when we were young. And I kind of am full circle now. I'm remembering those conversations. I'm remembering being 2 or 3 and being outside and fighting with my mom because I just wanted to sleep in the grass under the stars. And I was the little girl that would come home and my pants would be loaded down because I had rocks in my pockets. And so it's just been a part of my being, and my soul essence has been tethered to this realm since I can remember. And it's been a really cool process to reopen that door at this point in my life, and, just share with people and share with your listeners how easily it is to receive the messages that are there all the time. We're just so busy and we get so caught up in our crazy technological lives in 2021 that we forget and we don't hear the messages that are there and available to us every single day.
Yeah, and I remember, heard a long time ago, we sort of associate trees with wisdom, right? And that we say the trees have wisdom. And I remember when we were back in Australia, we went on a road trip, went to Uluru in the centre, and also went up through Kakadu and up in the Northern Territory. I remember we were in sort of like an ecological resort up there, and I was lying next to the pool. We had a bit of downtime, and the trees were just beautiful. They were across this swimming pool and providing shade, and they were just beautiful. And I remember I kind of connected my consciousness to the tree that was next to me. And what it gave me, it was almost like there was this information which was stored in the tree, and it was giving me a snapshot of how they built the resort. And I was seeing the problems that the owners had. It was almost like I had a bird's eye view. I could see them building the swimming pool, and it was almost like this data and this information was stored within the tree. And I was just like, oh my goodness me. So have you experienced sort of anything similar? And what's your sort of opinion on trees and consciousness and things like this?
Oh, Aeron, trees are one of my favorite things. So I actually have had downloads exactly like you are talking about. It began with me that I was able to start seeing their auras. I've always been the quintessential tree hugger person. So I grew up hugging the trees. I have always literally, there's so much healing that happens. Trees are transmuters. Trees have roots that are below. They have their trunk, which is a storage unit, and they have this beautiful canopy as above. So they really embody as above, so below. And so yes, I've been a tree hugger, and I started to be able to see their auras about 5 years ago. And that has kind of transposed into, like you said, when you consciously tap in, we can ask anything to communicate. We can ask a tree, hello, beautiful tree. Is there anything that you would like to say? We can ask the ocean. We can ask a rock. We can ask animals. We can ask the blades of grass. We can ask anything. Is there anything that you would like to share? And just by cracking that door open, by acknowledging that there is information, that it's a two-way street, that we're able to communicate with one another, you'll be amazed at what can happen just by simply asking the question. And I work with specific tree medicine. So I think that, I feel that one of the divine connections that I am supposed to help reweave with people is that medicine of the trees, is the medicine of the animals. Every tree has a meaning, and it's so simple in our 3D life to Google it. Like literally all you have to do, there's a tree that resonates. You love the black walnut. All you have to do is look up their spiritual medicine, and there's a plethora of information that can be found, and intuitively feel into that too. So when I create things, wood is actually my medium. And I also share, like if I'm doing a cutting board or charcuterie board for someone, I share the wisdom of the tree that the board is made from.
Wow.
And that, just weaving that connection, even if they're not there yet, They're still going to read it. It's with the instructions for care, and that seed has been planted. So trees are absolutely wisdom keepers. And I cannot wait to go see the sequoias in California, because I can't imagine the details and what they hold. But it's really, really incredible to just go sit in nature and ask if there's anything that they would like to share with you.
What are the things that you have learned from trees? Have there been any specific lessons, any specific downloads of information, directions that you have received from?
That's a great question. I have we are very blessed to have a little A-frame cabin tucked in the woods at this magical little lake that is like a portal. And on this property, there's typically a mother tree and a father tree in whatever forest you're in, and you feel it. Like you feel their presence, you feel their energy. And the mother oak happens to be in my backyard. Well, in my neighbor's backyard is the trunk, but the tree is in my backyard. And during a storm this spring, one of the huge branches actually came down off the tree. And the branch was probably, like maybe 30 inches in diameter. Like it was the size of a tree itself. That's how it would take 5 people to get their arms linked around this tree.
Wow.
And I was devastated. I was so sad that this beautiful mother oak had lost this limb, like literally her limb. And I went and got flowers at a local store, and I came back and I made a mandala for her. And I laid out the flowers, and I just kind of tapped into what she needed. And I just sat there with her. And as I was sitting there, I could hear like the leaves rustling, because the leaves had started to dry and die on the branch that had come down. And out from the back of this limb came a baby fawn deer. It still had its spots. It was no bigger than a medium-sized dog. And she had been resting inside the tree, where like under the branches. And I listened and I asked the tree, I said, okay, so is this not what it feels like to me? Because I was feeling loss. I was feeling kind of like that lack. And the tree spoke and she said, oh, child, you're looking at it all wrong. I have provided shelter for the forest animals. Birds will now make nests in this branch. It was weak anyway, and it was almost like she shed it. It wasn't lost. It was a purposeful shedding, because it was a weak branch and it was going to fall anyway. So here I was, so sad and so upset that of the loss of this branch and this tree. And the lesson was, there was so much beauty in what it created. It created a safe space. It created a safe haven. It created wood for people to have and work with the element of fire. The Amish came and they were able to take some of the wood and they'll create furniture with it. So this part of her will live on in different media and in different means for generations. And I sat there and I started to cry, because it was such a beautiful message of flipping on its head what I originally was feeling and thinking. And that was just from 1/2 hour, 30 minutes that I spent with this beautiful, majestic tree.
Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful story. It really ties in with what Gabi Kowalski was on the first episode of Architects of Destiny, shared with us, that how she envisions the new earth is that we'll be co-creating with trees, with plants. So let's say we need to build houses with some building materials, with wood. And we'll ask which tree wants to volunteer for that. Is that how you see things?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was walking on the beach this morning, and before I started my walk, I took a second and I said, I just asked my spirits and guides, and I asked the ocean and all of the shells that were washing up. And I asked for anything that was okay for me to take. Anything that was okay for me to use their medicine, because there's medicine in everything, to please let it be known to me and to make it clear that I make the right choice. And I did exactly that. I said, who would like to come with me so I can share your medicine? And I found some beautiful feathers and some beautiful shells that I will be able to take home and work with.
I think when we're talking about, just back to trees just slightly and plants, I think mainstream science is kind of starting to catch up to this now. And, there's been sort of studies around the network of trees and how they communicate to one another. And there was a super interesting experiment. And we heard this, there was a fantastic gentleman called David Wilcock on YouTube. And he was talking about, I can't remember if it was in the 70s or the 80s. And it was somebody who was doing these experiments with plants, right? And it involved a polygraph test. So the polygraph, basically the lie detector test, was invented to sort of hook up to humans to detect stress levels, right? So he thought, okay, well, I wonder if I could hook it up to plants. So he had little pads and put them on the leaves. And there were certain instances where the plants would feel stressed. Okay, so he was sending the plants love, okay, nothing but love in the first sort of test, and they were all calm, and it was just calm on the polygraph. And then he was just sending the plants just really nasty thoughts, and they were becoming really stressed. All of them were. And then even more interesting, there was a situation. They were up in an office, I think on the 5th floor, and all the plants were hooked up. And they weren't even conducting an experiment, but the plants then became stressed within the office. And he was trying to figure out why, because I think he was just making a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. So he started ringing around the building, and the plants apparently get used to the people that are around them. And what was really interesting, the plants were getting stressed, and he ran downstairs and he said, is there something in the building which is not usual, that's not usually here? And at the same time that the plants started getting stressed on the 5th floor, the landscape gardener had walked in the front door on the 1st floor. And to the plants, obviously, he's a mass murderer because he's cutting all the grass and doing all this kind of stuff. And all the plants on the 5th floor were getting really stressed that this individual had walked through the ground floor. And I was like, what? But it's just goes to show they all talk to one another, right? They all communicate.
Yes.
Fascinating. It's fascinating.
It is amazing. There was a study that was done as well where plants were in like separate rooms. And like you said, it was a room where they would, it was, like maybe down the hallway, and they would clip the plant and like they were pruning it, and the plants down the room would react.
Yeah.
So there is this really cool network of communication. And I believe it's in Colorado. There is a grove of aspens that's the oldest grove of aspens, and they consider it one tree because it started with a tree and it's now acres and acres and acres and acres, but it's considered the largest tree because of the one that started it. And they have been able to do scientific tests, and it all the genetics are the same. The DNA of the tree is of thousands of trees have the exact same DNA because of that one tree that started. So that's really cool too. Science is, I think people separate science and spirituality. To me, they're a lot more similar than we think. And for people that need the tangible, it's really cool to start seeing those connections being made. And the scientists that embrace the spirituality to start looking at things, it's just a perspective shift, and it's really cool to be alive while that's happening.
How do you think, Shelley, we can actually, what can we do as humans to live a more harmony with the rest of the universe, including trees. Do you, from your experience talking to trees, how open are they to us communicating with them? Do you feel like there is some, sadness perhaps on how we treated this whole plant and tree world over the centuries? Or do you think, how do you feel like when you feel into this collective consciousness of plants?
That's actually a beautiful question. And for me, what I feel with plants, and it's actually the same with animals, they don't hold on to things like we do as humans. So energetically, they are always open to communicating. They're always open to, being heard and as far as a sadness, while, like wildfires, for example, while wildfires are happening, of course there's trauma. But is there any malice to the person that may have accidentally or purposefully started the fire? No. Energetically, that doesn't align with them. It's almost like, they're beyond that. They don't, but yes, while there is trauma happening to them, while forests are being cut down, of course there's trauma. That's their community. So they're always open to connecting. Animals are always open to connecting with us. And I feel that it's our responsibility to help people make the connection to the animals and to help people make the connection to the trees, because it's scientifically proven that when we are emotionally invested, when we care about something, we treat it differently. So if we can start with the little ones and start instilling in the children, a respect for the animals and a respect for nature and the trees and the plants. And, I have little people in my family that know that when I cut the grass, I always tell the grass to pull their energy back because I have to mow. It's just part of the maintenance. But when I'm pruning my trees or I'm pruning my plants, I sit with them for a second. I thank them, start with gratitude, and then just let them know, look, I need to prune you. Could you please pull your energy back? And you just give them a second to do that. So yeah, I think that once we start connecting and caring and forming that relationship, then, that's where the spark happens.
This episode is brought to you by the Quantum Club. The Quantum Club is a membership program designed to help you develop your spiritual abilities, such as connecting to your galactic soul family as guides, speaking light languages, channeling, transmitting and receiving light technology. Every week we hold live sessions and work with you energetically on a deep level to unlock your divine intuitive gifts, to connect deeper than ever before with your higher self and galactic light beings. To find out more, head to bit.ly/galactic club. That's bit.ly/galactic club. See you there. I think everything on this beautiful earth just responds to frequency. And I think, if the frequency you broadcast is of a certain resonance, then, the animals, especially, you see that, where they become innately comfortable around you, right? So, I mean, we've come to Costa Rica, and, Riya, one of the light languages she speaks is lyre and feline. And, it's literally within a couple of days, we've now got 3 cats that have become resident at the back that we're feeding twice a day. They tend to gravitate towards you, right?
Manifested within the first 48 hours. Just one night at 2 a.m., there's this noise, and I thought it was tapping the door. And I thought it was one of the wild animals, like an anteater or possum. But no, it was actually a cat, and it was 2 a.m. I was still jet lagged, so I wasn't really asleep. 5 a.m. the cat is still there, and I'm like, assumed at the beginning that it was a neighbor's cat that just perhaps, I don't know, made a mistake and came to our door. But no, the cat is still there. So I thought, okay, I need to feed her. And then, yeah, of course, she was really happy with that. She was quite poorly, like parts of her fur was missing. It looks like she was in a fight. Then she brought 2 of her sisters. So now we've got 3 cats.
Yeah, we have. And I just think, coming into animals, it's just how they respond to frequency is amazing. And I remember there was this one lady, beautiful soul, who I sort of work with on a one-to-one basis, and she's an Andromedan starseed. And basically, we brought down, connected her to her Andromeda guides, and she now embodies this Andromedan frequency, totally in harmony with their environment, their planet. It's an amazing frequency. And there was a real instance, it's a modern day miracle what happened. And I think we'll come into sort of healing animals and things like this in a second. But I remember she told me this story and she'd taken it for granted. She'd just gone, oh yeah, this kind of thing happened with the neighbor's dog. And I was like, okay, what happened? And the neighbor's dog was quite sick. And the neighbors had taken the dog to the vets. Vets didn't know what was going on. They were running blood tests and all of this kind of stuff. And the vets considered it sort of seriously ill. And, the beautiful soul that I was working with, she just felt called to go and spend time with the dog. So she just approached the neighbors and said, if it's okay, would you mind if I just sat with the dog for half an hour? So she sat with the dog half an hour, just kind of loved it and petted it, sent it the frequency, and sort of went away. 2 days later, the dog had made a full recovery. And this happened sort of 3 months ago. The dog had made a full recovery. They took it to the vets. Vets didn't know what the hell had gone on. And they were just like, well, we can't really work out what's going on, but your dog is fine. So just take that. And so the neighbors were really, really happy. And she told me this, and I said, do you know what? If this had happened back in, not going into the religion, but if it gone back in biblical times, that would have been considered a miracle. What you've performed there with frequency is a modern day miracle. And she just looked at me and was just like, and then it just dawned on her what she'd done. And I was like, you need to appreciate the significance of what you've done with frequency there. The dog has made a recovery based upon what you were kind of broadcasting, or what the frequency you'd embodied. And you spent time with the dog and you've healed that dog. So have you come across sort of any instances like that where animals have kind of got better through frequency, or anything you can share with us?
Yes. And thank you for sharing that story. That is absolutely beautiful. But yeah, I think to digress a little bit for everybody listening, everything has energy. Everything has frequency.
Yeah.
And as we are progressing through this timeline, I think more and more people are tapping into that. And that's actually how I communicate with animals. I kind of start with color, like my frequencies kind of show up as color bands. So I see a color and then I can tap into that. That's their frequency, and boom, we're having a conversation. So it's very cool that more and more people are able to start tapping into that frequency, because in my soul, that for me is the future of medicine. It's going to be healing on that frequency and energetic level in the future. We're not there yet, but we're starting to be able to tap into that. Like Reiki practitioners thousands of years ago tapped into that source energy where they were just channeling the energy coming through, whatever your source is. If it's Andromedan, if it's just universe and you're not quite sure who it is. So for me, I practice animal Reiki and I open up to whatever it is that will come through. And it's amazing. Animals are great. Like, one, they're open. So there's no preparation. Like with humans, when we're doing energy work, we clear the space and we call in the guy. You still do that, but sometimes people need to release first to create room for the healing to come in.
It's that conscious mind blocking sometimes
Yes.
It's like, oh, I don't believe it. And it's, So with the animals, don't get that.
Not at all. They're just like, let's go. Like they're ready. And what's cool is you'll start doing work with an animal, and before you know it, they've flopped on their side. Some of them roll on their backs. They're snoring, they're farting, they're releasing, they're doing all the things. And then as soon as you're done, or as soon as they're done, they will, they'll just like turn their head away. They'll get up and walk away. They'll go get a drink. They go take a nap. It's like they communicate so clearly. Like they take what they need. And when they're done, they're like, thank you. Like that was amazing. And off they go. And so as far as, working with animals, it really is amazing to be able to tap into that and let that flow through us. I'm a conduit. I'm a hollow bone. That's a term you hear in shamanism. And it's like, please let me be a hollow bone for whatever energy and frequency this animal needs or this person needs to come through me for their highest and greatest good.
Amazing. And I think as we move forwards, there's really not going to be any room for this sort of the pharmaceutical Western medicine, sort of Gaia, this beautiful earth sort of produces everything we need. Combine that with frequency and energy. There's just going to be no room for the pharmaceutical industry as we kind of know it. I think the whole thing is going to transition, and it's just going to be, it's about sort of holistic care, because literally this planet grows everything that we could possibly need, right? And you look at the sort of pharmaceutical products and stuff, most of those, if not all of those, derive from plants, and they're just packaged up and stuck in cellophane. And we think that this product's a great thing, but actually the source of it comes from plants, doesn't it?
Yep. And that's one of the things in shamanism is that you go back to the source. So if you are drinking your water, give thanks to that water, but then take a second and just trace back what that water came from. A river, it came from a lake, it came from somewhere. Go back to that source and thank that too. Like you said, everything that we get pretty much is coming from plants. So just take a second to go back and thank that. That's a tiny first step in, again, making and weaving that connection.
I was just wondering, how do you rebuild and rediscover that connection? Because this is not the way we conditioned. We just think of everything that surrounds us almost like as objects, as inanimate. We even say, oh yeah, it's inanimate or whatever. Let's say this is all new to someone who's listening to it. Where do they get started with rebuilding this connection? Because it may seem like, oh my goodness me, now what? Am I supposed to bless my grass before I cut it and, pray over my water? That's a bit much. So, how do you get started so it becomes like normal to us?
Thank you for asking that question, because I think it's a lot simpler than people think or realize. So what brings you joy? Is it a sunrise? Are you a morning person? Do you like to feed the birds? Do cats come around? Is it the animals? Or are you a night owl? Is it the stars and the moon and sunsets? What are you taking pictures of? That's a huge indicator for what is resonating with your soul. Because you're going to photograph what brings you joy, what makes you happy. So scroll through your pictures and see what you're taking photos of. For me, I'm a huge sunrise person, and trees in nature. So if you're following me on social media, you're going to be bombarded with all of those things. But yeah, scroll through your pictures and see what is it that catches your eye, and start with that. So if it's the sunrise and it's the colors, then okay, what is it about the color? What is it about? Is it the time of day that I like because it's quiet and everything is just waking up? Or, is it at night when there's a blanket of darkness and you're kind of wrapped in this beautiful, even if you're in a city, there's still a blanket that wraps you at night when the stars are out and the moon is out. Even when it's cloudy and you can't see them, that energy is still there. So start little, start with one thing that brings you joy, that resonates with you. It might be flowers, it might be gardening, it might be painting. If you're painting, what are you painting? What are the colors that you're painting? And what does that remind you of? And then you can start lengthening that string, and you'll get a little road that goes off to the right and a little path that goes off to the left. And that's how simple it is. But yeah, it just came to me. I've never spoken of looking through your photos. So thank you for that download. It just came because, like I said, we're going to photograph things that bring us joy. So let's start with that and just flip through your pictures and see what it is and start there.
Awesome. I've got one more question about pets. And some of listeners will be wondering, wow, maybe I can communicate better to my pet, my dog or cat or rabbit or whatever you guys have got in your household. Where do you start this communication? For you, it comes through color, you said, but can it come in all different ways? What's your experience?
Yep. For me, like when I'm doing a pet communication session and I'm tapping in, that's where I really focus on the color and the frequency and go that route. And that also helps when I'm communicating with animals that have crossed over. But for everyday life, anybody that has an animal or a pet, you're talking to them all the time. Like if we have animals, they're part of our family and we're having conversations with them. What we don't connect is you're legit having conversations with them. So when my little pug looks at me and I'm like, I know you love me. I love you too. It was because I was receiving the frequency of her just giving me those puppy eyes like, oh, Mama, I love you. We do it all the time. Yep. I know you're hungry. It's almost time to eat.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I know. I hear you. We didn't go for a walk today, but we're going to go tomorrow. We're having these conversations all the time. We just don't connect the dots. That's what we're doing.
I think they're masters at nonverbal communication. And, they can kind of just give you a look and you just know instinctively what they're asking, right? And it's like, and they're masters at getting what they want as well. So, if you've got a dog or whatever, they'll just come up and just give you a certain look. And you're just like, okay, I'll just go and give you a treat. Or you want to go for
exactly.
Just masters at communicating non-verbally, right? They're amazing.
Yeah. I think also the message is that if you're opening up your consciousness and perhaps communicating with different energies, with maybe galactic energies, the same apparatus, the same consciousness could be used to communicate with the earth. And I remember Aeron, before he even started channeling the galactic beings, like years ago, when we had the dog, who used to escape all the time.
We used to nickname him Houdini because he would get out of anything and everything was a challenge for him. So yes, we had a big garden. It was all nice and secure and nice and safe, but that wasn't good enough. So he'd be looking for a weak spot because he could, He was like one of those. He was just proper character. And, there'd be... I remember once, like we had this wooden gate, and I can't remember where we'd gone, and we came back, walked into the back. It's just incredible. Walked into the back sort of garden. The gate looked like somebody thrown a grenade at it. Boom! It's gone. It was in pieces all over the floor. I was like, oh my goodness. So we called in our carpenter, and he came back and he repaired it. And a few days later, our dog at the time, he'd worked out he could do this. So the grenade went off again and he kind of pulled it just because he could. And we're like, okay, pull the carpenter back in again. And the carpenter then braced this gate with these pieces of 2x4 across the planks and stuff he put in. But he was quite ingenious because then I think about 3 days later, he used that as a ladder to climb the gate and climb over.
But going back to animal communication, so Aeron thought, okay, I'm going to start maybe chat to him mind to mind. And he was, so
Yes.
what happened?
I remember I sort of consciously asked him at the time, years and years ago, I just said, because that dog was Eric. And I said, Eric, I said, why do you keep wanting to escape? And he just came back, because I can. And I was like, hey, what do I say to that? Okay. Fair enough. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah. He's a character. So out of all the amazing sort of modalities and things that you do with sort of consciousness and plants and animals, if you had to sort of pick, and I know it's difficult to say, can you pick a favorite? Because I know you love them all. Okay. But if you had to pick something which maybe you're a bit more drawn to than the others, what would it be for you?
I would say right now I'm really resonating with the animal communication. And that is, there's a lot of perspectives and facets with that. One is reconnecting people with spirit animals, reconnecting people with animal messengers, because there's messages, just like with different trees have medicine, different animals have medicine. So you're going on a walk and you're outside, or you're, and all of a sudden a little fox darts across the road in front of you as you're driving to work. And then 2 days later, you're in line at the grocery and the woman in front of you has a fox tattoo on her back. And then you're driving home and there is this BMX bike racer, and it's the Fox brand. Okay, obviously those are synchronicities. They're like, hey, hello, I'm trying to talk to you. And so that part of it really resonates with me. For the communication, I've been doing a lot with animals that have crossed over. And what I have found is the profound healing for their owners. These are our beloved family members. And when they're no longer with us, there seems to be a lot of guilt if they need help crossing over. And did I make the right decision? Are they mad at me? Are they upset with me? Which the answer is always no for anyone listening, always no. But what I have found is the profound healing that takes place for the owners, and to be able to provide that and be a part of that process is such a beautiful gift. And so right now it's definitely the animals that are resonating for me.
Oh, that's beautiful. And thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
There's one more
but
question.
We have one more question, and it's basically we ask the same question to every single guest, and it's just kind of like a little signature thing that we do on the podcast. And it's basically if you had a little time machine like this, okay, not the iPhone, but you had a little time machine in front of you now, and you could go back 10 years, okay, and speak to your younger self from 10 years ago. And you could only give one piece of advice based upon your wisdom and knowledge at the moment. What would be the one piece of advice that you would give to yourself from 10 years ago?
I love that. Immediately, what popped up was just listen. Just listen. The communication is there. It's every day. It's all the time. Our guides are with us all the time. Spirits are with us all the time. Energy is with us all the time. Frequency is with us all the time. Just listen.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Architect's Destiny podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Your energy is just so lovely. It's just like a really calming hug, a frequency hug. It's just beautiful to be in your presence. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you.
Oh, you guys, thank you. My heart is so full, and I'm mirroring back to you the energy that you guys are putting out, because it is so beautiful. And I'm so blessed by our conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.